We now move to question time, and I call Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong, and it follows the revelations in today's front-page story in the Australian newspaper about the activities of the Environmental Defenders Office in the Barossa pipeline case in the federal court. Minister, how can the Albanese Labor government continue to fund the job-destroying EDO when it pays individuals to so brazenly collude and invent evidence such as someone who was, quote, happy to move the alleged resting place of a rainbow serpent on a map to where it seems most culturally appropriate?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Well, the first point I'd make is that I think the comments on the EDO's conduct by Justice Charlesworth in her judgment on this case really speak for themselves. I would say that we did go to the election with a clear commitment to restore funding. However, the government expects the Environmental Defenders Office to act ethically and professionally. The Minister has also previously written to the CEO of the Environmental Defenders Office making that clear, and I am advised that the court will make a decision on costs next week, as they should. What I would say to the EDO is that there is a place for sensible, appropriate litigation to preserve the integrity of laws, and that I think all Australians, regardless of where they sit politically, would expect them to act in terms of their remit, both ethically and professionally, and I think the comments of the judge speaks for themselves.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, how can the Albanese Labor government continue to provide tens of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to the job-destroying EDO when it not only paid an individual to create an alleged expert report on the Barossa case that was sent back to them for their own wholesale editing to ensure it met expectations, but also paid the head of the Stop Barossa gas campaign, who then in turn paid traditional owners to become involved in her campaign?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong. First supplement.
These are actions not of the government but of the EDO, Senator, I believe that there is a place in our system of laws to ensure that there is the capacity to uphold a legal framework, but I do not believe, if you read Justice Charlesworth's comments, that the conduct of the EDO has met the standard that any of us in this place would expect should be met by an entity which is charged with assisting with the observance of laws in this country.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, why is your government not immediately, today, ending your multi-million-dollar funding of the EDO? And do you agree or not agree that, as well as being eviscerated, as you've already referenced, by federal judge Justice Natalie Charlesworth, this organisation has also been involved in many other nefarious and disgraceful activities throughout the period in which your government has been providing money to it?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
I'm asked to respond to a range of unspecified assertions. I'm obviously not going to do that, Senator. But what I would say is that, one, we went with an election commitment to restore funding to the EDO. I know that those opposite don't believe that there is a place for entities that have standing to be able to ensure that environmental laws are observed. But what I would say is there is no, there's no place for unethical or unprofessional conduct. And that is the expectation that the Minister has made clear to the CEO of the Environmental Defenders Office.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ghosh.
My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. At every opportunity, the Albanese Labor government has provided cost of living relief, delivering bigger and fairer tax cuts so Australians can keep more of what they earn. We know people need help with their bills, so we have provided energy bill relief. We know students are under pressure, so we slashed student debts and expanded fee-free TAFE. We've made childcare cheaper medicines cheaper and bulk billing more accessible. Western Australians often raise with me the cost of groceries. What is the government doing to ensure Australians get value at the supermarket checkout?
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Ghosh for the question and for focusing on the needs of his constituents in the great state of WA. And Senator Ghosh is right to point out of all the measures that this government has put in place to help with those cost of living pressures. We know that people are doing it tough, and we know particularly in reference to the last part of Senator Ghosh's question about how many Australians are feeling about the price of groceries at the moment. And we've been making it clear through the work that the Prime Minister has been leading on cracking down on supermarkets and resourcing the ACCC, just how seriously we take any suggestion of shonky behaviour that will cost Australian families at the checkout. The Albanese government will introduce legislation that will see supermarkets face multi-million-dollar penalties for breaches of the Food and Grocery Code of Conduct. This is part of our broader competition policy agenda to get farmers and families a fair go. The bill provides the maximum fines under the Food and Grocery Code will be at least $10 million. These are serious penalties. They are the highest corporate penalties under any industry code. Regulations to make the new mandatory Food and Grocery Code of Conduct will be made this year, as I advised Senator Pocock yesterday, with the code coming into force from the 1st of April 2025. The new code will help ensure that supermarkets are as competitive as they can be, so Australians get the best prices possible. This is all part of our broader competition policy agenda, which is cracking down on shrinkflation by strengthening the unit pricing code to make it easier for Australians to make accurate and timely price comparisons, working with states and territories to reform planning and zoning regulations, ensuring the ACCC will be notified of every single merger in the supermarket sector, in the biggest strengthening of merger reform in half a century, and providing
thank you,
the
Minister.
ACCC
The time for answering has expired. Senator Ghosh, first supplementary.
Monthly inflation data were released today by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. What did the data show, and how is the Albanese Labor government managing the inflation challenge?
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. The data released today, and it is welcome data, Senator Ghosh, as you point out, that the monthly inflation figures remained at 2.1% in the year to October 2024, the same as the previous month. This means, you've never seen an economic statistic you would welcome, would you? 2.1% in the year. I mean, those opposite, what they'd love to see is inflation remain higher. That is what they are arguing for, because every time we get a good economic data set in, and this is welcome, 2.1%, it's much more welcome than the 6.1% we inherited. Let's just say that. Let's just remember what we inherited. Inflation with a 6 in front of it and increasing. Interest rates increasing under your watch, peaking in December. We've seen interest rates stable. We're seeing inflation coming down.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Order. I'm waiting for silence so that Senator Ghosh is able to ask his question in silence. Senator Ghosh, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Whether it's putting the supermarkets on notice or managing inflation, the Albanese Labor government is working hard to make lives easier for all Australians. The cost of living challenge is real, and that's why we've provided relief wherever we can. What could be standing in the way of the government delivering further cost of living relief for all Australians?
And just a moment, Minister, before I go to you, I will advise the gallery, advise the chamber that in the gallery today we have the former Honourable Senator and former Age Discrimination Commissioner, Dr Kay Patterson, and with her is Ms Joanne Balchin. Minister Gallagher.
Hello, Ms Patterson, one of my constituents these days. Welcome. So nice to see you there in the chamber.
I didn't know that.
And I'll get back to the question now because I only have 54 seconds to go. Thank you. So the question again on cost of living, and I had those interject over in the previous answer about annual trimmed mean inflation, and they were You must have been very worried, Senator Patterson, when annual trim mean inflation was at 4.3% under your watch. You must have been very, very concerned at that point, because it has come down. It has come down to 3.5% in October 2024 from 4.3% on your watch. So let's just remember what has happened in this term. Inflation was rising under the former government. Interest rates started to increase under them, and since they've been in opposition, they've said no to tax cuts for every taxpayer, no to minimum wage increases, no to pay rises for aged care workers, and no to cheaper
Thank
medicines.
you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator McDonald.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Is the Minister aware of any conduct that the Environmental Defenders Office has engaged in that would give reason for the government to reconsider the millions of dollars in taxpayer funds the job-destroying EDO receives each year?
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Minister Wong.
I think I'm asked whether I assume the Minister I'm representing is aware of any conduct, problematic conduct, if I may paraphrase. Obviously, the Minister has already made public comments in relation, I think, to this matter. Certainly I have on her behalf today and possibly previously, but I'm very happy to get further information on what the Minister has engaged in with the EDO and what expectations have been made clear to the Environmental Defenders Office, and return to the chamber.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McDonald, first supplementary.
How has the government satisfied itself that the taxpayer-funded and job-destroying EDO has not been subject to foreign interference and is not in receipt of foreign donations?
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Minister Wong.
I'm sorry, I was slightly distracted at the beginning of that question, Senator, and I apologise for that. But if the question is, do we know of any foreign interference in the EDO? No, I have no information I can provide. In relation to your first question, and I'm indebted to Senator McAllister, I'm advised that this evidence was provided at estimates to your colleague, Senator Duniam, as to amendments or new clauses put into funding agreements with the EDO subsequent to a number of the allegations or issues which have been publicly raised.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McDonald, second supplementary.
Minister, my question was, sorry, just waiting till you're not distracted.
Sure.
It was how had the government satisfied itself that this was not the case, not whether or not you were aware. But can the Minister guarantee that the taxpayer funding provided to the job-destroying EDO cannot be used to help settle any court cases where it has fabricated evidence and coerced witnesses?
Minister Wong.
First, in relation to foreign interference, we have a very robust system of foreign interference against foreign interference in Australia, so I would just make that point. That would not necessarily require to be regulated through funding arrangements and so forth. We have an overarching system which guards against foreign interference in this country. In relation to the second issue, as Justice Charlesworth indicated, the sorts of suggestions which you have put forward, the sorts of propositions, I would trust the legal system in Australia to make sure that any evidence that was fabricated, any evidence that was fabricated to the extent that, or in the way that you have described, that a court would have the capacity to recognise that, and that would be something the judgment would have regard to, as I think as you have since.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Shoebridge.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs. Minister, every single human rights organisation and multicultural community that has spoken to your government's latest 3 migration bills has said they will separate families, damage communities and send people into danger. Why has the Albanese government chosen to work with Mr Dutton to push through this brutal anti-refugee, anti-migration legislation, despite the calls from every NGO in the sector and all people with a conscience?
Shame.
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. And Minister Watt.
Thanks, President. Thanks, Senator Shoebridge. The practical reality that the government is encountering is a series of High Court decisions that need to be responded to. As Senator Shoebridge would be well aware, this parliament has debated a number of bills and passed a number of bills, not with the support of the Greens, to deal with some unusual situations in immigration law, but there have been at least 2 High Court decisions in recent times that I can think of that have found deficiencies in that legislation and that have called into question various immigration practices of this country. Now, a responsible government, when faced with that situation, has a choice whether to rectify those issues to accord with community standards about these issues or to ignore them. Now, I understand that the Greens political party would choose to ignore those practical realities, but this government understands that when the High Court makes decisions, then governments need to act. Now, Senator Shoebridge asks why the government chooses to seek agreement with the opposition on these matters, and it is the case that there have been discussions with the opposition around these matters. And one of the reasons that we do that is because whatever the subject matter, we can rely on the Greens political party to say no. This week we've seen it again, with the Greens political party finally caving in on housing, but we see it on every single issue that the Greens political party have made a political judgment that it's in their political interests to oppose what a Labor government is seeking to do. If the Greens political party decided to have a different political strategy and was prepared to actually work with the Labor government rather than block us, then maybe we'd be in a different situation.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Shoebridge, first supplementary.
Yeah, sure, Minister. Labor has now created mandatory detention, offshore detention in PNG, and stopped people who sought asylum by sea from ever making a home here, and has now introduced a package of bills that includes a Trump-style travel ban. When will Labor stop teaming up with the coalition to attack migrants in the hope to peel off some votes from the right? And when will you stop attacking people based on where they were born?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator Shoebridge, I could answer the question simply by referring you to my previous answer, but I might take the opportunity to repeat the point that the way the Senate operates, no party has a majority to pass its legislation. And I think it's well understood that for our government the options are to come to an agreement with the opposition on a matter or to come to an agreement with the Greens on the matter. And as we have repeatedly seen, not just this year but this entire parliamentary term, the Greens political party has no intention whatsoever of supporting Labor legislation, because that would involve cooperating, that would have involved compromise, and that would have involved actually achieving something rather than blocking something. So we understand that it's to your political, or you have thought that it's to your political advantage to block Labor. It would appear that parts of your party are starting to understand that maybe that's not such a politically successful strategy. But I know, Senator Shoebridge, that you'll never be in the camp of compromise to achieve reform. You will always be in the camp of
thank you,
destructive
Minister.
opposition.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Shoebridge, second supplementary.
Again, sure, Minister. Mr Dan Tehan bragged today that the coalition is, and I quote, running the immigration system for the government. And they're not wrong. Why is Labor just surrendering immigration to the coalition and Peter Dutton?
Senator Shoebridge. Order. Order. I remind you to refer to those in that other place by their correct titles.
Is Labor just surrendering immigration policy to the coalition and Mr Peter Dutton?
Thank you. And Minister Watt, I remind you to direct your comments to the chair.
Thank you, Chair. President even. President, I make the point again that Senator Shoebridge obviously has a political agenda. I think even members of his own party understand what Senator Shoebridge's political agenda is. We have a different agenda, and that is to govern in the interests of all Australians. Now, Senator Shoebridge might be the last person in his party room to understand that the destructive opposition that he and certain others in his party room have been employing for this term might not be working out there in the real world?
Sorry, Senator Shoebridge. I didn't see you stand. Senator Shoebridge.
Oh, no, that's okay, President. My question wasn't about the Greens. My question was
on a
about
point of order?
Labor.
Senator Shoebridge, are you on a point of order?
Indeed. My point of order is relevance. My question was not about
okay,
the
I'm
Greens.
not
My
asking
question...
you to go into your question. I've noted it down. I
But you
believe
haven't-
that, Senator Shoebridge, I believe that the minister is being relevant.
of course
I
you
will
do.
listen closely and call him to the question if necessary. Minister, please continue.
Thanks, President. Well, President, Senator Shoebridge obviously has had a road to Damascus conversion, where he has realised at the end of this term that he and his colleagues have spent the entire time voting with Peter Dutton to block housing.
Minister Walsh, Mr Walsh, you've just got a promotion, Jess. Senator Watt, I am going to draw you to the question, and I'm going to remind you to please refer to those in the other place by their correct title. Minister, I'm not sure who jumped first. Senator Waters.
Yeah, thank you. That's just going too far now. You're adversely reflecting on a senator. And actually the question was about your cosy relationship with the opposition. So could you please address that?
Senator Waters. Order. 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 Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I would remind Senator Shoebridge, for all his feigned outrage, that he was the one who put a very political statement at the end of the question. The minister is utterly relevant in responding to that political statement.
Thank you. Thank you. I have drawn the minister back to the question and reminded him how to refer to others in the other place. Minister Watt.
Yeah. Thank you, President. And I take the point of order also from Senator Waters talking about the cosy relationship with the coalition. Well, if we want to talk about cosy relationships, let's look at the Greens' activity over this term in blocking housing. And now it's the Greens who are lining up with the Cooker faction of the opposition to block social media reform.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Time for answering has expired. Senator Walsh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. I know people in my home state of Victoria are doing it tough, as they are across Australia. How has the Albanese Labor government used every day of sitting this year to progress cost of living relief for all Australians? And how have Mr Dutton and the Liberals and Nationals tried to block every single cost of living measure this entire year? How will government legislation passed by the Senate this week help Australians?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Walsh for her question. And we know that Australians are doing it tough at the moment. And we also know that when we came to office, Australians were going backwards. Higher inflation, rising inflation, falling real wages and $1 trillion of Liberal debt. And Labor has been working hard to clean up the mess, and the Albanese government's economic plan is all about helping people with the cost of living while fighting inflation to bring costs down. And it is good to see. It is good to see inflation at around a third of what we inherited. A third of what we inherited. All year in Parliament, we've been focused on the #1 issue, which is cost of living. And despite every effort by Mr Dutton to block, we are turning promises into progress. Last week, the government's Help to Buy scheme passed the Senate, a shared equity scheme that means 40,000 households, teachers, childcare workers, nurses will be able to buy a home. And it is Labor that is working to lift wages and to bring down costs, delivering progress on Australians' priorities. And last night, of course, the Senate passed legislation to deliver a 15% pay rise for early educators and teachers. And I salute Senator Walsh and the many union members and officials and secretaries on this side who ran the campaign that enabled a Labor government to deliver it. They are the ones who delivered it. The members and the Labor Party are the ones who delivered that pay increase. We passed legislation to give extra funding to our public schools, and we are wiping $3 billion in student debt for more than 3 million Australians. For someone in Senator Walsh's home state of Victoria, with a help debt of $27,000, they'll see around 1,200 white from your outstanding help loan.
Minister Wong, order. I'll remind senators at the beginning of question time I talked about the disorder in this place. It is not the role of the opposition to try and speak louder by yelling over a minister. Completely out of order. Minister, did you wish to continue?
Thank you. Unlike Senator McKenzie, we think it is a good thing to reduce the help debts of students in her state. Senator Walsh thinks that, Labor thinks that. I'm sorry that you have such a problem with that, Senator McKenzie. Minister.
Senator McKenzie, I have named you a couple of times. Senator McKenzie, you're not in a debate with me. Either sit and listen or leave. You are to sit in respectful silence. Senator Walsh, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. What cost of living relief measures has the Albanese Labor government introduced to keep costs down, including at the supermarket checkout and for power bills?
Minister Wong.
Thank you. Those of us on this side, rather than the culture wars that we've seen, we're focused on cost of living. We're focused on how we help Australians with the #1 issue, that is cost of living. How do we work to lift wages and bring down costs, including government initiatives like the tax cut for every taxpayer and energy bill relief for every household that those opposite voted against. And we are working to ensure Australians do not pay more than they should, including at the checkout, by supporting the competition watchdog so it can crack down on bad behaviour, by working to improve competition through merger reform and planning, by taking action to fight shrinkflation and introducing big penalties for supermarkets who do the wrong thing, and getting Choice to provide quarterly price monitoring. I mean, the reality is there's one side of politics which is focused on cost of living measures and ensuring wages keep increasing, and that is the Australian Labor Party.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walsh, second supplementary.
After a decade of reckless neglect and mismanagement from the Liberals and Nationals that led to Australians being worse off, how is the Albanese Labor government working to clean up the mess and build a brighter and better future for all Australians?
I'm going to remind the chamber, particularly those on my left, before I call the minister, I expect people to be silent. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, this government is focused on ensuring we deliver on promises, deliver progress, and this government, unlike those opposite, is working to lift wages and bring down costs. We on this side, we back Australians to get higher wages. On that side, they want lower wages. We on this side have backed Australians to get lower taxes. They wanted to call an election so they could have higher taxes. We on this side have backed Australians to deliver cheaper medicines, fee-free TAFE and more homes in every part of the country, all opposed by Mr Dutton's opposition. Now, people across this country are still under pressure and there is more to do. But what we want to be very clear about is Mr Dutton has blocked or tried to block every single cost of living measure this entire year, and what we know is he wants cuts to Medicare, he wants cuts to pensions, he wants cuts to schools and TAFE, he wants cuts to cheaper childcare, he wants cuts to cheaper medicines, and his reckless arrogance has real costs for Australians.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Environment and Water, Senator McAllister. The ABC's Landline program has reported the Victorian Labor government is considering the compulsory acquisition of about 3,000 hectares of farming land around Horsham by the Chinese mining company to extract mineral sands. Families have been farming much of this land for generations, while other mineral sands mining operations in the region have left a legacy of damaged soils and contaminated water sources. There are also concerns about impacts on water quality in the Murray-Darling Basin. Minister, why hasn't this project come under review according to the provisions of the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Just a moment before I call you, Senator McAllister. I heard the general comment you made, Senator Ruston. It was unparliamentary, and I ask that you withdraw it.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, Senator Hanson, I actually am not aware of the particulars of the project that you reference, but I can say this about the way that the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act works. Essentially, there are a list of things that, if engaged, cause a matter to be referred to the Australian Government for consideration. Otherwise, for the most part, decision-making about environmental impacts is a matter for the states and territories. And so many of the things that are raised, and they're often raised in estimates by members of the crossbench in particular, go to issues that are properly the area of the states and territories, and the Commonwealth doesn't seek to take over those responsibilities. The EPBC Act actually covers 9 protected matters, and if they're engaged to a significant degree, there can be grounds for the Commonwealth to consider those matters. So those matters are World Heritage Areas, National Heritage Places, wetlands of international importance that are listed under the Ramsar Convention, listed threatened species and ecological communities, listed migratory species protected under international agreements, by which we're talking about birds, Commonwealth marine areas, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, anything to do with nuclear, so uranium mines or other nuclear actions, and water resources that relate to coal seam gas development and large coal mining development. And so you listed a range of factors that you consider are relevant in relation to this project. I'm not in a position to comment on whether or not they do engage Commonwealth legislation, but more generally I would say to you that in many instances the kinds of questions that you're asking are usually the responsibility of states and territories.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Thank you for your list. It's a shame there isn't about prime agricultural land on it as well. The WIM Resource, the Chinese-owned mining company in question, plans to extract up to 490 tonnes of ore exclusively for China. This includes rare earth minerals and other valuable minerals, including rutile and zircon. Minister, why is the Albanese Labor government and the Allan Labor Victorian government allowing a Chinese mining company to extract these precious materials for their country instead of engaging an Australian mining company to
Senator
extract
Hanson.
them for our country?
The time for asking has expired. Minister McAllister.
President, I'm asked about a project that is reported in the media, according to the Senator, in Victoria. I've already indicated to the Senator that I don't have information about that particular project. I'd also make the point that she asks me in my capacity as the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment, but the question that is now directed to me I think goes to much broader questions around investment in Australia and the approach we take to the development of mineral resources. Those actually aren't within the portfolio area that I represent. I have given Senator Hanson the information that I do have about the way that the environment laws would apply to a project of this kind, but as I've already indicated, I really am not in a position to provide specific information about this project. It is simply not something that I am briefed on.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Look, I can understand that, but I've got to say, there are families that are living on this land and working the land for over 100 years, so I think that has a lot to do with it. And the Wimmera region around Horsham produces up to $2 billion worth of high-quality grains every year. But you say you don't have anything to do with it. Well, why did the Albanese government scrap the gold mine over a mythical insect and is holding up a $29 billion gas project for a poisonous sea snake? So when will Australia's world-class farmers be given the same protections against mining as mythical and poisonous animals?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. The Senator, I think, asks why prime agricultural land is not presently considered a matter of national environmental significance? And I think the answer is because these are the laws that have been in place for many decades now, arising from their passage during the Howard government era. And the EPBC Act does list 9 specific matters that the Commonwealth takes an interest in. It is the case that states and territories do, as I understand it, in some circumstances, consider the use of land use planning questions, including the significance of land for agricultural purposes. That's not actually a feature of the National Environment Law. Obviously, should senators consider that it should be a feature, it is open to you to bring forward reforms of that kind in your capacity as senators.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Nampijinka-Price.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, documents tabled in the Federal Court and reported by The Australian details the extraordinary lengths activists at the job-destroying EDO went to in their attempt to block the Barossa gas project, including reinventing and relocating traditional culture. Minister, is funding the EDO not the government supporting the EDO's exploitation of Aboriginal people and our culture?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka-Price. Senator Wong. Minister Wong.
Senator, I would refer you to the answer I gave your 2 other colleagues who asked questions about this. I don't believe, if you read Judge Charlesworth's comments, that one could be anything other than deeply shocked by some of what has occurred, and I would say to you that I have faith in our legal process to ensure that the sorts of actions that have taken place are dealt with appropriately, including through the legal process such as the action, the costs order, which I referred to, I think, in answer to Senator Duniam. So I think the comments speak for themselves.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Nampijinka-Price, first supplementary.
Minister, the documents tabled in court connect the job-destroying EDO with consultant Antonia Burke, who in turn admitted to assisting Senator Dorinda Cox in drafting legislation. Minister, if the government is content with the taxpayer-funded EDO exploiting traditional owners, is it also content with the EDO supporting partisan politicians?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka-Price. Minister Wong.
Senator, I don't know whether you had the courtesy to let Senator Cox know that you were going to ask a question about her, but I would say to you that, in general, I don't have a view. We use this place to deal with those sorts of issues. If there is an issue if there is any suggestion that behaviour was not consistent with the terms of the funding arrangements, then that relevantly is a matter for the Commonwealth. And Senator, what I'd say to you is I would want I'm sure the Minister will consider the funding agreement to consider whether the assertion that you have made is within that funding agreement. I understand the Minister did ask the Department to review the funding agreement after some previous allegations, and I also understand the funding agreement was amended, as Senator McAllister has indicated in estimates. Well,
thank you, Minister. Senator Nampijinka-Price, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, will the government continue to give the job-destroying EDO taxpayer money even if it is ordered to pay Santos's legal fees?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka-Price. Minister Wong.
I'd refer you to my earlier answers, but what I would say, Senator, is that I went through earlier some of the clauses which had been inserted into the contract after some issues had been raised previously. The first one was that the grantee must ensure that personal, working and legal practitioners comply with all applicable state and territory laws governing the legal profession and hold a current practising certificate. The second amendment was that the grantee must notify the Commonwealth immediately on becoming aware of any disciplinary proceedings or orders made by a law society or any adverse comment or finding in a decision made by a court regarding the conduct and performance of the grantee.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Thorpe.
This question is for the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Minister McCarthy. Minister, I understand that approximately 90 applicants for the latest round of Justice Reinvestment grants were recently informed that their applications would not even be considered. This decision reeks of disregard for those fighting to make meaningful change on the ground. Can you confirm the total number of applications that were sent this letter, and how many were from organisations that were First Nations controlled and operated?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Wong.
Senator Thorpe, I understand that that program is in fact administered in the Attorney-General's portfolio. I'm happy for you either to redirect the question or address it to the Minister representing the Attorney-General. I'm not trying to be difficult. Sure. Well, I think it's a program that's not covered by Senator McCarthy's portfolio, but is.
Senator Thorpe, I'm going to invite Senator Thorpe, come to order. Senator Thorpe. Senator Thorpe, withdraw that comment.
Well, how come you tell me off?
Senator Thorpe, withdraw the comment.
Having a go at me.
Senator Thorpe.
You don't hear them, do you?
Senator Thorpe, you are not in a debate with me. You either withdraw the comment you just made. No, you need to stand and withdraw. Thank you. Senator Polley, I'm not quite sure what you said, but no, Senator Polley, in the interest of... Senator Thorpe! Senator Thorpe, if you can't come to order, then I will rule that you not be heard. I am trying to work out what happened. I do not need your interjections. If there was a disorderly comment, I thought it was Senator Polley, but my apologies if it wasn't. I'm inviting whoever it was to withdraw in the interest of the chamber. Thank you, Senator Billick. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Thorpe. This government has made significant new investments when it comes to justice matters involving First Nations people. We've particularly made investments through our National Justice Reinvestment program that are entirely designed to support the legal needs of First Nations people in a wide variety of communities right across the country. Many of them, of course, are in remote communities. They've spanned a range of Indigenous corporations, leaders groups, legal services. As recently as September this year, Minister McCarthy and the Attorney-General jointly announced an additional 6 organisations selected to deliver justice reinvestment initiatives in everywhere from the northern...
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Thorpe.
Relevance, President. The question is, there's 90 applicants, 90 mob have reached out
Senator
saying,
Thorpe,
what's going on
Senator
with this
Thorpe,
minister here?
Senator Thorpe, please resume your seat. You don't need to repeat the question. The minister is being relevant. You did talk about a particular program. The minister is responding to the first part of your question. Minister Watt.
So as I say, Senator Thorpe, or through you, President, there are a wide variety of organisations that have been funded already by this government through our Justice Reinvestment program. I don't know the circumstances of the groups that you're referring to, but it is not unusual through funding programs that there are more applicants seeking funding than can be provided funding. So it may well be the case that some of the organisations that you're talking about did apply unsuccessfully for funding, but I can take you through the list of organisations that have received funding. In February this year, we funded 9 organisations to deliver justice reinvestment initiatives across a number of states. In April, we funded an additional 10 organisations to deliver justice reinvestment initiatives. In September, an additional 6 organisations selected to deliver justice reinvestment initiatives. And they are, of course, in addition to our early investments in Alice Springs and Halls Creek. So I understand that maybe not everyone is successful, but there's a lot of groups getting funding as well.
Expired. Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
Can you please outline the reasons for the 90 that weren't considered as part of their application? 90. They want an answer.
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Watt.
Well, I don't think, Senator Thorpe, you'd expect me to have the details of a tender process in a portfolio that I'm not the minister for. But it is customary for feedback to be provided to applicants as to why they're unsuccessful. I'm happy to take on notice what I can provide about why those particular groups were unsuccessful, if in fact they did apply. I don't know whether they did or not. But as I've said to you, there's a very large number of organisations now that have been funded as a result of this government in a way that hasn't been done before under previous governments, and that's a good thing because these organisations are delivering important services to people who deserve that support, and that's exactly what our government will do going forward.
Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
Applying for government grants is time-consuming and diverts organisations' time and resources away from meeting the urgent needs of our people. Will your government compensate those 90 applicants for the resources they wasted on a process that led nowhere?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Watt.
Well, I wouldn't have thought that we would be compensating groups who are unsuccessful in receiving government funding across every single portfolio of government. There are far more organisations that apply for funding than it is possible to fund. We don't fund any groups who are unsuccessful in obtaining funding. I don't know whether the particular groups that you're talking about were eligible for funding or not, but the reality is that
Senator Thorpe.
The reality is that there are a large number of organisations ranging from the Cowra Information and Neighbourhood Centre Incorporated to the Namalaya Cultural Leaders and Justice Group in Maningrida in the Northern Territory, from what I can see here, from every state and territory in the country who've received funding. So, of course, it would be disappointing for those who've missed out on funding, but it simply isn't possible to fund every organisation who seek government funding, whether it be in this portfolio or in any other.
Thank you, Ministers. Senator Grogan.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management, Senator McAllister. My great home state of South Australia has recently braced itself for some catastrophic fire conditions over a number of days. The CFS volunteers faced really challenging conditions, and we are really deeply grateful for their work in keeping South Australians safe. What should Australians be preparing for this summer, Minister, and how can they get themselves and their communities ready?
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, I thank Senator Grogan for her question, and can I thank her? Can I join her in thanking the many paid and volunteer firefighters and emergency service workers across Australia that are facing some really tough conditions? Australia is unfortunately one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world, and this is our busy season. In the lead up to the season, the National Emergency Management Agency has conducted the largest ever preparedness program, directly engaging over 2,500 people through information sessions, running crisis scenarios to get us ready for the season ahead. This week, I'm also speaking with parliamentarians across this place on both sides of the aisle, and I thank all parliamentarians for this, to talk about the risks that their communities are facing and how they can prepare. As Senator Grogan mentioned, we are already seeing increased risk of bushfire in parts of South Australia crossing over into Victoria. We've also seen bushfires impacting Western Australia, the Northern Territory and parts of Queensland. And on the East Coast, communities are preparing for a season of severe storms and East Coast lows. Up north, we can expect a higher than average chance of severe cyclones, possibly drawing further south than usual as a consequence of the very warm conditions. We should all be prepared for the risk of heat waves. These are the largest killer of all of the natural hazards. They are a risk to communities in New South Wales and Queensland today. We can all play our part as parliamentarians to inform our communities by amplifying official sources and helping our communities to be prepared and to be ready in case of natural disaster.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Grogan, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Can the Minister please outline for us what the Albanese government is doing to better prepare Australians for this higher risk weather season and for the increasing risk of more severe and intense natural disasters?
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, the Albanese government has invested in a range of new capabilities that will provide more support to states and territories to respond to natural disasters. And these include our aerial capabilities. So we have, of course, a large air tanker, and this year it can be reconfigured both for firefighting and to deal with other emergencies. But we also have 3 heavy-lift helicopters, and it's the first time that the Commonwealth has invested in these multi-use aerial capabilities. We're also investing in the National Emergency Management Stockpile, and we have more resources in that stockpile, which include large generators, water filtration and purification equipment, water pumps and flood barriers. We're investing in risk reduction through our Disaster Ready Fund to help communities better prepare for future disasters, and nearly $750 million in Commonwealth and state funding has already been provided through this fund, with projects from Queensland to Western Australia, from the Territory to Tasmania. These are really critical steps that we all can support to assist our communities deal with these challenges.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Grogan's second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. That's really helpful. Can you tell us why is it that only the Albanese Labor government who can be trusted to help communities respond to and recover from natural disasters?
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, unlike those opposite, our government believes we believe in the science of climate change. And what that means is that we understand that natural disasters are increasing in severity and in frequency as a consequence of these changes to our climate. And it is one of the reasons that we take our commitment to reduce emissions as seriously as we do. It's also why we have taken serious steps since coming to government to rebuild trust with communities that was regrettably lost under the previous government. We want communities to know that in a disaster, the Commonwealth Government will be there to support you. And that has included building good, strong, working relationships with all states and territories to ensure that we can prepare effectively together, respond quickly together and recover well together.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Rennick.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Science, Senator Farrell. In his 1917 paper on the quantum theory of radiation, Einstein said the energy transferred by radiation is so small that it always drops out as compared to other processes. This is in line with his 1905 mass energy equivalence principle that says mass is energy. Given the mass of an electron is 1,800 times smaller than a proton, how can a photon absorbed by an electron in a carbon dioxide molecule at a wavelength of 14.8 microns, an energy of 1.4 to the power of -20 joules, be expected to increase the temperature of the surrounding 6,600 nitrogen and oxygen molecules by 1 degree without violating the first law of thermodynamics?
Order. 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 Senator Birmingham.
I'll grant leave for Senator Rennick to ask the question again if Senator Farrell needs it.
Thank you. I'm sure Senator Farrell does not need it. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Point of order, President. I just wonder if the Centre could assist with a whiteboard for Senator Farrell.
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Minister Farrell.
Bring him back. Bring him
back. Thank you, President, and can I thank Senator Rennick for the opportunity to revisit my views. And
1917.
My studies. You might be interested, Senator Rennick, that the university that I went to, Adelaide University.
Tell us about Uncle
Good year. Honours the Braggs. They were
the good Braggs.
They were two
the humble Braggs.
Order.
Two wonderful scientists who, father and son, both won Nobel Prizes. I have to say, Senator Rennick, I am at slightly a loss to uncover a question that I can answer. But can I say this? We have a fantastic minister in this area, Minister Husic, and I would be absolutely certain that when I speak to him after this, as I shall, he will very quickly have an answer for you, and I will come back to you, Senator, with a thorough answer on this question.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Rennick, first supplementary.
Carbon dioxide has 4 frequencies that absorb photons, 1 incoming infrared band at 2.8 microns, 1 non-polar at 4.3 microns, and 2 outgoing long-wave bands at 14.8 microns. Planck's law states that the energy of a wavelength is inversely proportional to its frequency, meaning that CO2 absorbs incoming photons with 5 times more energy than the outgoing photons it absorbs. Why is this cooling by CO2 overlooked by climate alarmists?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President.
Order.
And
Order.
thank Senator Rennick for his first supplementary question. Look, I think the science in this area is reasonably well settled, and the science in this area says that global warming is an issue, and it's an issue that all governments have to address, and in particular that the Australian government has decided to address. One of the things that I've been very focused on in my trade area is, of course, ensuring that we participate in the process to get to net zero. How are we doing that? Well, Australia is once again the lucky country because we have vast resources of the critical minerals that are going to be...
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Rennick, second supplementary.
Despite claiming the science is settled, the CSIRO has stated there are 40 different models to calculate net zero, despite only one equation that describes the relationship between gas and temperature, the ideal gas law, PV equals nRT, which can be broken down as mass times acceleration equals nRT. Acceleration represents gravity, which is the force that traps molecules in the atmosphere. Given this fact, why do climate alarmists believe some mythical greenhouse traps heat when it's actually gravity?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and Senator Rennick has asked a very genuine question, and I think it deserves a genuine answer. Unfortunately, I'm not the person who knows the answer, but I can assure you, Senator Rennick, that I take your questions seriously, even if some of our colleagues, even some of the colleagues behind me, don't. But I do take your questions seriously, Senator Rennick, and I will raise these issues with the Science Minister and come back to you with a formal answer in due course.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Senator Wong.
Subject to Senator Birmingham not wanting the last 15 seconds, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Thank you, Minister Wong.